Call to order. Hello? Hello? Okay. Call to order for a Watertown City Council meeting for October 16th of 2023. Please rise while Jody Brinkman, the pastoral care representative from Prairie Lakes Healthcare System, leads us in prayer.
Dear God, thank you for the individuals gathered here tonight serving as leaders in our community, whether they be a council member or a citizen bringing about important matters. Please help them to have insight and wisdom and to always put the good of the whole community first. We ask your continued blessing over the city of Watertown and the surrounding area, the state of South Dakota, and our beloved country, the United States of America, along with our allies near and far. Please help those countries or regions of the world that are oppressed and are shattered by wars such as Ukraine, and may you be with the people of Israel and all that is happening there. Please provide wisdom and guidance for America to help avoid large-scale conflicts or war, and to help bring peace and solidarity to others. As we pray in all of these things in your name, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Danforth?
Yes.
Helene?
Here.
Jurens?
Here.
Peters?
Here.
Chuddy?
Here.
Tupper?
Here.
Bueller? Here. Thank you.
Quorum is established. The chair will entertain a motion to approve today's agenda.
So moved.
Motion made by Councilman Danforth, seconded by Councilman Bueller. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, the motion is to approve today's agenda. All those in favor will now please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Now is the time for open forum. If there is someone here who would like to discuss something in front of the council that is not on today's agenda, now is your time to do so. Just please recognize yourself and who you may be representing.
Hi, Roger Meyer. I'm representing Dakota Dispensary, one of the medical.
Turn your mic. Yeah.
Dakota Dispensary, and just one of the 3 medical marijuana licenses that are open in the city of Watertown now. And I just got my renewal license fees in the mail from the city, and I know we had discussed about lowering the fees, and I haven't seen much come about that at all. Been researching the other cities our size, all are at about 5,000. And we just seem to be somewhat out of line on the annual license fees, I think, on it. It is not a money-rich business by any means at this time. Banking is extremely difficult. The software is expensive. $2,000 a month just for the license fees is just really hard to take, to be honest with you, to make it profitable and keep your doors open. And I was just wondering what the discussion and the feelings, got a lot of new faces since bought the license, so just kind of wondering what other people's feelings were on the council, and if you had any questions about the business.
Thank you, Mr. Meyer. It is the policy of the City Council to not use open forum as a means of debate, but however, respecting what you were saying in regards to the ongoing license and that it was implemented prior to several of our members being on council, I will allow City Manager Mack to give a quick update upon what has happened and what may be going on right now.
Thank you, Mayor. Your request was discussed either at a council meeting or a work session, I cannot remember off the top of my head, several months ago. And it was the determination at the time that the fees for 2023 would stay in place, as we'd already had at least one, if not 2 of the others had already paid their renewal fee for 2023. When we bring the fee resolution in December for 2024, that will be the time for council to have a public discussion if they want to change what those fees are, and whatever they get changed to, or if they remain the same, will be implemented in January of 2024.
Excuse me, City Manager Mack, is that a public hearing to set the fees?
It's not a public hearing, but it is done it's a resolution. It's done at a council meeting. You all take action on it.
And it's in December?
Yes. And yeah, either the first or second meeting in December.
Mr. Meyer, I would recommend possibly looking at the schedule and being aware, and I would probably allow you the leniency to testify on this matter at that time when we're setting the fees for the upcoming year.
Because my license is due on December 1st. So that would be a month I'd pay for that $25,000 license then, if it was changed?
We're not sure, and we're not, as this is something that is not on the agenda, this is why we don't want to enter into a public debate, because we
Okay.
haven't had,
Okay.
or to think prior. So we don't want to say something that puts us on the record as then having to be something that we have to take back later on. And that's why we just, but
I
so,
just didn't know where we're at on the whole situation, and that's kind of why I'm here, just asking about it, to be honest with you, so.
all right, thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council in open forum?
I'm kind of
Just please identify yourself.
Yep. I'm Dan Fierstead. I got the Lions Den license here in town. I sat in here for the meetings with all you guys, you know, when we discussed, or you discussed it, and you guys kind of looked at each other and did the 25, and it went, you know, really quick, just like that. Matt Roby was the city attorney at the time, and even when he talked about how it was written, you know, you guys do get to set it, but he even mentioned, you know, we have to set a reasonable price here, you know, or we could see something in the future, and that's kind of where we're at now. So I just wanted to make sure, you know, I'm on board with this too, and just whatever we got to do, you know. And it doesn't seem like there's only 3 of us, so the communication, you know, between the city and us, I mean, I didn't even know this meeting was, I know we weren't part of it tonight, you know, but it'd just be nice if there was some way, you know, there's 3 of us that they could reach out and just let us know when these kind of things are, you know, are to be talked about or whatever. So I don't know if you guys communicate with any other licensees, and I don't know how it works, honestly. I feel with 3 of us, you know, it would be nice to have some kind of communication on all that, if there's anything like that. But if not, that's all I wanted to say. And yeah, like he said, a lot of the other municipalities, they're around that $5,000, and even that to operate a business in America is, you know, nobody else has to really do that kind of stuff, you know, but I understand. It'd just be nice to be talked about. So, thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Fierstad.
Yep.
City Manager Mack, did you have anything to add?
I would just add that for all of our license holders, whether it's for medical marijuana or alcohol, when they are up for renewal, we do send correspondence. Otherwise, you know, this, like you mentioned, is not a topic on the agenda tonight, so it would have been difficult for us to notify people. But if it is a topic, well, any topics that are on the agenda, usually the affected parties are somehow aware. So I'd continue to watch for the agendas to come out. You can subscribe to alerts, so you'll know that.
Give me a little leniency.
I'll give you some leniency, Councilman.
Just so you guys understand, is once a year we look at all fee schedules. It's not just liquor license or marijuana licenses. It's gas fitter licenses. I mean, there's tons of different licenses in there. We look at the fee schedule for fines, things like that. That's done once a year. So it's hard to, like City Manager Mack said, it's hard to reach out and let somebody know that those are all there. It's done once a year on a citywide basis, so.
Thank you very much, Councilman. And actually, I don't have much to add about this, but I understand. I mean, it's a difference because right now what you're hearing is a notice of renewal, so you were notified, but that's different than a public, or it's different than the council taking up action upon the fee of that renewal. I would say if you come back and testify when we're setting the fees, we would make it, if there was any change to happen, I'm sure that the council would be open to discussing making that proactive over the time going forward. Like if you have to renew on December 1st and then the fee we set for January 1st, we would have that as part of the discussion if it is the will of the council to change that amount. So But thank you. This is what open forum is all about, is to raise issues in front of the council that otherwise might not be on our radar. So thank you for coming forward and doing so in a very civil and mannered way. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the council in open forum? All right, I will close open forum. We'll go right into presentations and reports. First off on the agenda tonight is an update on the ice arena project from our good friends at Tegra.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Oh, this one not on? Let's try that. Good evening, everyone. So Mike Van Cly with Tiger Group. I think I've met most of you before. I know you all know Dick as well, so he's here supporting me. But we wanted to just go through. We did an update. It's going to be very similar to the one that we went through back in May, kind of the same format, but just wanted to let everybody know what we've been up to. So going to hit high level, some project budgets, talk about some other direct owner furnished items, enhancements to the job, where we're at with the construction schedule, and then we've got a few progress photos to go through as well. If you have questions along the way or else at the end, whatever works best. So kind of big picture here, back in May, we were at total project budget of 36.4. We're now at 36.5, but the big asterisk behind that is that there was $100,000 private donation specifically targeted at adding the juniors team room shell. So that's the reason that the budget has went up. We've reallocated some money between contingencies and soft costs and construction, as would be expected along the way. So all of that is well within kind of what the project plan would be, and overall we're tracking well within the budget that we have. The project looks to be real successful from that perspective. So beyond the RJM construction piece, there were a lot of parts and pieces that we've been working with the city staff to procure, and everybody's kind of taken an active role depending on what their expertise is. So specialty AV systems, been working a lot with the IT department on all of the different network gear and cabling and all of that stuff. Both the video security system, door access system, the concessions equipment was a real big undertaking, making sure that that was all gonna operate as needed. Furniture, the scoreboards through Daktronics, which we were able to work out a really good, I'll say, plan with that. So we're gonna have a more robust scoreboard situation than what we had originally talked about, just due to some deals that we were able to work with them. Got the rental equipment on order, skate sharpener, and then as everybody loves to see, the Zamboni. So all of that's tracking right now. Working with RJM to just put together the delivery dates that these things can start showing up to make sure that we coordinate with the construction schedule. So the enhancements, what this was were things that we added onto the project after the original design was finished, based on needs, desires, budgets, things like that. The three items at the top we talked about a little bit last time. So the radon mitigation system did get installed. There's some setups on your main rink so that you can put in some additional suites if so desired in the future. And then we're bringing over the varsity lockers from the existing arena, which we went and looked at them, and I mean, very nice. So we wanted to bring those over. Since then, these four items down here are really some additional items. So the exterior building signage, that's a big package that got designed and incorporated into the project. We were able to upgrade our skate traffic, the flooring in the skate traffic areas. We had kind of a, I'll say a better, and now we went to what I would call a best from an operational standpoint. The varsity locker room, which I'm gonna go to the next slide, which is this green bar on the edge, that was an alternate that wasn't accepted. But what we did is we prepped the building so that if you decide to add these extra varsity locker rooms in the future, you'd be able to more easily. And then back here, this is the juniors shell that the donation was made to pay for part of it. So that is a fully enclosed empty room, I guess is what I would describe it right now. It's meant to be built out by the juniors team when the juniors team is found and signed, so that it can be built out to what they need. But it's, you know, roofs, it's got heating, it's got walls, all of that stuff is as part of that junior shell build-out. All right, so construction schedule, contract, we starting in about a year ago, and originally the plan was to be done mid-December. We are now early January, and that is specifically due, so in the construction schedule, or in the construction contract, the contractor is responsible for what your typical quote-unquote weather days would be. And so you compare what the Weather Service says should happen through all those months based on what was actually did happen. Basically, there were 36 days total of out of the ordinary weather, 14 more than average, and so that pushed us from mid-December into early January. So I will still say it's tracking well. Everybody's being very responsible about it, but just wanted to be clear that that was a shift that had happened.
Mike, I'll be the obvious one. It's January of 2024.
Oh, you're right. We're never going back, are we? Yeah.
I didn't know.
Reed, that is how good we are, right? That's all I can tell you. So,
You're better at construction than you are in English.
yes, exactly.
Okay.
My math, the math for my calendar math.
All right, thank you.
Perfect. No, okay. Oops, I thought I had one more. Nope. Okay, so then to kind of get into some pictures, so these were taken last Wednesday. Obviously standing in the parking lot, looking at your main front entrance. So this is the other side. I had labeled it as concession seating, but I think you could kind of argue a lot of different titles for it. So within this area here is a bunch of windows, and that is where your tables are for the concession seating. This window here is the back of your pro shop, rentals, skate sharpening, and things like that. And then administrative office kind of is in this other piece. So sort of a lot within that picture. Look in the other direction. So as of last Wednesday, about 80% of your parking lot was paved. They do it in 2 lifts, 2 layers. So as you can see where it's blocked off here, this parking lot is fully paved. Where they're still driving, they just put down 1 lift to protect it, and then they'll come back and get the second lift down. So speaking of the junior shell, when we got there at the beginning of the day, they were working on pouring footings. This little picture up in the upper corner is the footings that were poured that day. Shoot, I should have had this date. Early November is when the wall panels will show up, and this will start to look like a room. So I'm standing, so maybe I should say out here, these are the windows. This is the concession seating area. I'm standing in one of the multi-purpose / community rooms. There's 2 of these, the one that I'm standing and taking the picture and the one next door. Through these windows, you look into rink number 2. And then the rest of the way down is obviously just the lobby area and the wall framing within there. So rink number 1, your main rink, you can see that the stadia is in. These pipes that are here right now is the underground heat piping. There's more that goes on top of it after that, but that's kind of step number 1, layer number 1. And then this is just kind of the farther end showing structural steel spanning between the 2 sides, things like that, both of rink number 1. This concrete for rink number 1 is scheduled for early November, and then that floor will go in and become hard. So rink number 2, I am standing kind of up in the lobby area looking out towards it. This is all covered with plywood, which is a good practice, so that as they're working over top of that floor with lifts or whatnot, as they're hanging lights, painting bar joists and things like that. So that floor is fully poured out and, like I said, protected with plywood. This concrete was just poured that Wednesday, and then it's kind of the path to get out to overlook the rink from the main lobby. All right, and this one here, I'm on the east side looking down the corridor. This is an exterior wall, and underneath here are all of your team rooms, this is just an example of that, underneath the stadia, the bleacher seating, where all the different team rooms are going to be. And that is the last of the photos that I had. So questions, anything else I could run through real quick that would be useful.
We'll open it up for any comments and questions from the council, and we'll start with Councilman Shetty.
Thank you, Mayor. So yeah, thank you for the presentation and all your guys' work on this. Question on, I believe we have a state hockey meet set for March. The time frame of the ice being cured, or if there is such a thing as
Yep.
far as the process, could you touch on that?
So right now, we're looking early January. You should have working sheets of ice on both rinks.
Mike, would you give us a quick timeline as far as like big dates projected going forward to the completion?
Big dates going forward is going to be the early November for pouring out of that second, the main rink. And then we've got, we're still waiting for, and it's not late, it's not delayed, it's just the ship date and the installation of the electrical switch gear, but that's all still tracking. And then we've got a big order of the rubber flooring, which again is tracking well, but that's supposed to be here like second week of November, if I remember correctly. And then after that, it's a lot of finished stuff that's actually readily available or on hand. So then the next components that are going to be critical are the things that are direct purchased. So furniture, concession equipment, the AV stuff, the scoreboards, and all of those are on order. And everybody's been given a time frame of December-ish. And then we're going to go back and confirm with them within the next couple weeks to say, do we want it beginning of December, mid, end of December, so that we can have it on time. So we're sitting in a really good spot right now.
All right, and thank you very much. And I guess one question that might occur out in the community is, you talked about the delay due to weather. Would this be a situation where once the building is enclosed, then the danger of weather delays diminishes?
Yep,
Significantly?
absolutely. So the one well, there's two weather-dependent activities that aren't wrapped up yet. One is the paving, and everybody is all over that with plans, and there's a game plan, and it's all tracking. And then the other item is landscaping and your plantings. And so we're actually working through a plan right now on, let's put the trees in, let's put the rocks in, let's put the stuff in that is still gonna grab hold this fall. And if there's plants that are a little bit more delicate, we might suggest waiting until next spring. Nothing that'll affect operations, but just things that'll make, I'll say, the manager's life a little bit easier because he won't be dealing with dead plants right away, so.
Sure. Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? Councilman Danforth.
And I should know this, but all the direct purchase items are, and the total cost of that's all contained within the total budget, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Thank you very much for your work on this project.
All right, good.
And that leads right into our first item under 9A, which is an approval of the professional services agreement for owner's representation consulting services associated with a wastewater treatment facility and collections project with Tegra Group Incorporated in the amount of $207,000 roughly. We'll go to our city manager, Mac, to explain what this one's about.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a little context. The ice arena, which we just talked about up until a couple of months ago, was the largest capital project that the city had ever embarked on at $36 million. We now have a $61 million wastewater treatment facility and collections system upgrade. And in looking at the massive amount of work, the number of contracts, the number of players involved in that project, we thought it would be beneficial to have our friends at Tegra help guide us through that process again. They have been very impactful and very helpful as we've navigated through the ice arena project, working directly with the contractors, subcontractors. They review every pay app and invoice that comes in to make sure that we are paying what we are supposed to be paying and not a penny over. They're holding contractors accountable to what they've agreed to in the contract. And given the considerable dollar amount on the wastewater project, we felt it was valuable to bring them in to provide the same kind of services for that. With that, I will turn it over to Heath to elaborate a little more.
Our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye.
Actually, I think that summed it up pretty well. I could stand by for any questions.
I would leave it open to Mr. Strasburg or Mr. Van Cly if you want to add anything before we open it up, but you don't have to, obviously. We like hearing from you.
Well, good evening, Dick Strasburg with Tegra. So I think on this project, if we compare it to the ice arena project, ice arenas are sort of typical construction, typical commercial construction. Now, arena, this case, I mean, it's got ice systems, there's some complexity to it, but it's new construction. And what you're doing with your wastewater treatment facility, it's remodel. You know, it's expanding and remodeling, and it's just plain more complex. It's got a lot of complexity to it. So I think that's, if we look at kind of the difference and the different roles on it. And also we've worked with Heath and some others, at the city in looking at this. And your staff, I think, is very well qualified on the technical side. Much more than we are. Much more than we are when it comes to the inner workings. We can't tell you if it's the right, horsepower on a pump or something. Our role would be to manage the process, similar to what we're doing on the ice arenas, but I'd say working closer with the technical side with Heath and his team, because it's a lot more complex, and it's just more of a rough and tumble business when you come into the wastewater treatment contractors and engineers and so on.
Mr. Strasburg, has Tegra done wastewater facilities before?
We're just finished up negotiating the contract for Yankton on their project, and it's similar. It's a remodel. It's the same kind of thing. It happens. It's the same engineering team. So to answer your question, yes, we have.
All right. Thank you very much. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agreement.
So move.
Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Shetty. Open it up for questions, comments.
Mayor.
Councilman Peters actually beat you to it.
One question for you, if you would, Dick. How many members from Tegra do you have allocated to this project? Anticipated FTEs?
I think it's fair to say that we've got, if we look at what we've had on the ice arena, I think we've got, 3 right now that are working on it. It would be that and more. We've got 4 people in our office that have the, I'd say, heavy construction background. And I think this one, to start with, it'll be all 4. And the gal that's working, that's negotiated the contract in Yankton, for example, she'd be involved with this one as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. City Manager Mack would like to add something.
Mayor, just as a clarification, the cost will be absorbed into the 61 million. It's not in addition to.
Thank you. Councilman Tupper.
All due respect for your company, Tegra, in the excellent job you've been doing for the ice arena. One question I do have for either City Manager Mack or Public Works Director Von Eye, was this a bid type situation or? Yep. Was it put out for bids?
No, we did not solicit bids because it's professional services, so we're not required to.
Okay, that's my only question. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Mr. Strasburg, I would like to, you did such a great job of explaining to the council what the ice arena project would be like as far as like timeline and the difficulties, like the stages as far as like getting it to start, and then it dipped and then it went back up. Is there a similar process with wastewater? Or what, how is this different?
Part of this is what you've got X amount of dollars here. And it's a matter of how far we can extend those dollars. So it's a little different than what you had with the ice arena. Because here we want to upgrade as much of that facility as we can afford to upgrade. So then the process on that is kind of taking it step by step. So you get into it further, and that's where the complexities come. You have to take a step and start the work. And it's a remodel, so there'll be surprises. And also something else that comes into this is the whole bypass, because you've got wastewater flowing into that facility all the time. So everything has to be bypassed when you do the work, and that gets real complex. And what we don't know yet is how that's all going to be planned out. And that's where some of there's a lot of dollars in the bypass, and obviously we don't want to spend a lot on bypass. It's just to get through construction. So it's not as smooth a process or as linear as it was on the ice arena. This is more like you take a step, you evaluate, you take another step, you evaluate. with the whole goal of maximizing, the actual physical improvements that you can make within your budget. Something that adds the complexity of this, the dollars source where you got these dollars and other cities, getting dollars on it. There's just a lot of this kind of work. And that makes it challenging because there's not enough contractors to do all the work. So that makes it more of a challenge.
Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for, as far as a better understanding. Councilman Danforth.
Yes, Mr. Strasburg, which I feel odd calling that because we worked a lot together, so I'm gonna call you Dick. But, Dick, we're gonna try to get these dollars to go as far as we can, which means at some point in time, there's gonna be some identification of prioritization of where those dollars go. In a project like this, and this, Mr. Van Eye as well, how does that work on a project like this? When here's what we want to do, here's our dollars, at some point in time that may or may not match up, and we got so many dollars. How does that work in regards to the prioritization of where those dollars go?
So I'm going to step in if it's all right and take that question. So we met with Craig, Marcy, and I will apologize, I don't remember. There's another person hired recently in engineering. And we toured, and we actually started off working with Craig to understand exactly what was the most important when he was looking at, age of equipment, proper flow. We talked about things that nice to have versus must have, and sort of started to put that prioritization already in line. And then we met with Justin to kind of walk through, there's a rough schedule that's been outlined right now, talking about when these different GMP, different guaranteed maximum price packages would be designed enough to bid. And so we're working to get those in the right order so that we can see how far we can stretch it. And we already know what I'll say the tail is, what would be really nice to have, and we kind of have identified what would be the first thing likely to be, I'll say, not done if we couldn't stretch the dollars all the way out.
And then also, just a clarification with our contract, we would take it, this is bringing it to the GMP. This is doing the heavy lifting on it to get us to where, so you've got it stabilized on where you're gonna spend the dollars and have that all pinned down. And then I think we'd, work with them to see if we're needed after that. A little bit like on the wellness center, Mike, same type of arrangement. We brought it to the GMP. And then I think we'll determine, what services are needed, I'd say if any after that. These are complicated. So I think we have a very good relationship with the engineers, and I think it's working well, but there's a lot to these projects.
Councilman Beeler.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just for the benefit of our new council people and perhaps some of the public, we've worked with Tegra for a number of years. We started out with the Wellness Center. We've had great success. I think they've done a great job for us. They've saved us a lot of money over the years. I wholeheartedly believe that. And, we definitely get what we pay for, I think, when we work with these folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would just like to comment as well in discussing this prior to bringing it forward to the agenda. I know that City Manager Mack was a big advocate to say that Tegra more than earned their money as far as what you earned in salary, what you saved the city more than offset that. So, as well as getting us a better finished product. Thank you. Any further questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Director Von Eye.
if I could follow up on one of Dick's comments, and I apologize to put you on the spot right here, but the post-GMP services, there is an Exhibit B in the agreement that does identify some post-service GMP function from Tegra. Is that at an additional cost, or is that at this price that we're locking in today?
Yeah.
So the way that we had set it up, Heath, was a monthly fee to get through the Exhibit A, which was up to GMP, and then we included the Exhibit B as kind of what the services could look like with a not to exceed rate, but it wasn't included in the first month.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. Thanks for that clarity. It's written in the background information differently
Yep.
than that. My assumption was wrong when we put the agenda item together. So it was written in the background for the agenda item that the entire services were part of this price. So thank you for that clarity. I'm glad I asked for that point of clarity.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? The motion is to approve the agreement. We'll do a voice vote. All those in favor will say aye, opposed nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Danforth,
Aye.
Pauline,
Aye.
Jurens,
Aye.
Peters,
Aye.
Shetty,
Aye.
Tupper,
Aye.
Bueller. Motion carries.
Motion is unanimous. Motion carries. Thank you very much. We'll be seeing you going forward.
Next
We just
Wednesday.
we just didn't want to miss you. You know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a first reading of an ordinance amendment to Chapter 18.01 of the ordinances of the City of Watertown, removing language related to streets and avenues being plowed on specific days, as well as adding language for declaring a snow emergency. We'll start by going to our Public Works Director, Heath Von Eye.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So this is as discussed in the previous work session meeting from last week, where Street Superintendent Bainan and myself walked through some of the proposed language regarding an ordinance amendment and some of the details in the ordinance related to how we plow snow and perform some of our winter street maintenance operations. They're really paraphrased in three short summaries. The first one being that Section 1 of that Chapter 1801 is that we'd be allowing for the declaration of a snow emergency, and it removes the east, west, north, south, odd, even days street clearing operations from that chapter of the ordinance. The second regulation change, it relates to parking on boulevards. There's currently a restriction that doesn't allow vehicles to park on boulevards early in the winter season because of the need to clear all cars from all streets under that snow emergency declaration. We felt that amending this section would allow for the temporary use of those boulevards. Of course, that would be limited to the availability for vehicles to do that based on the snow conditions, but it does allow some latitude, some leniency there for the handful of residents that undoubtedly would be impacted not having anywhere else to put their vehicle, i.e. those locations that don't have driveways or garages or other off-street parking areas. The third change is really defining what the snow emergency is, and it allows the city manager or their designee to declare such emergency and the necessity for all vehicles to be off all streets once an emergency is declared. Those generally summarize the changes. I know in the work session, we talked through some concern about what I would call the core area of town and where we're likely to find more of those residential locations that don't have off-street parking capabilities. And Rob and I are willing and able to talk here tonight on any potential changes that we might want to entertain as the council sees fit as far as bringing a final version of this forward for second reading at the next council meeting. With that, both Superintendent Bainan and I will stand by for any questions.
Superintendent Bainan, do you have anything to add before I open it up to the council?
I don't think so. Heath did a very good job.
All right, thank you very much. First reading, so there is no official action needed to be taken, but we would welcome questions and comments. Councilman Danforth.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I think you guys did a good job at our work session previously in discussing this issue. And I understand why we want to do what we want to do. I fully support the notion that we declare and give that via ordinance language, give staff that right to make that declaration. I do think we're going to have problems with doing away with the more scheduled snow removal. I have heard from a couple of people, just in passing, literally a couple, that kind of shared many of the concerns that were expressed here at our work session meeting. So I'm not sure where I'm going to be at in that regard. Some of the changes are fine. The parking on boulevards may sound good in theory, but when you have a winter, when we have a lot of snow, that's not going to work very well. So it's an option that in our minds we may think will work, but probably is not going to work. So again, the declaration part, I agree with. I do have a lot of concerns with moving away from the defined schedule for a lot of people in their ability to know when things are going to get done and where do they best manage their vehicles in order to accommodate our needs. So just a couple comments.
Councilman Tupper?
I'm going to kind of echo Councilman Danforth's concerns there. If we were to set this all in ordinance and change our definition of doing streets and avenues, and we find it doesn't work, what would be our recourse to that without having to go through another whole reading of the ordinance? So,
City Manager Mack?
Changing the language or taking it out of the ordinance doesn't mean that we can't still operate that way. It gives us the flexibility that if we wanted to operate a different way, we could. And I think what we talked about at the work session was, the core of town really is the only area that we operate with the streets and avenues. The outside of town, the newer areas around the lake, all of that, we can't operate with streets and avenues because they don't exist in the same way they do in the core. I would just provide a word of advice or caution that it becomes problematic to put into ordinances operations because that makes them incredibly difficult to change when we need to change them. So taking the language out does not mean that we can't still operate on a streets and avenue in the core of town manner, that we wouldn't still advertise it that way. But if we found a system that worked better, we could change it. And these two might have something else to add to that.
Mayor, can I get a follow-up?
Councilman Tupper, follow up?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at, is because we put it in ordinance, and if it's, something that we can adjust to, then I would, that's just that much more caution to me, because I got to agree with Councilman Danforth. We're going to get into some of those areas of town where, it might sound great that we're going to be able to park on the boulevard, but when we get 2 foot of snow, most people aren't going to be able to get in their boulevard, let alone park in it, and then we're going to pile snow on top of that. So I just want to make sure that we don't end up with a situation where, we got to tow a ton of cars. It makes your job harder. It makes everybody's job harder. So I just want to make sure that we do it very cautiously, and I totally support what we're trying to do. Let's just keep an open eye when it does happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Peters.
Thank you, Mayor. This has kind of been answered in the discussion here, but how often will you guys exercise this right? Is it something every time it snows and it's declared emergency, you guys would shift from streets to avenues, or is it a as-needed basis? And would you still operate under the streets and avenues operation right now, or is it automatic every time there's an emergency you would roll into both?
Director Von Oy.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councilman. The intent would be that this snow alert be declared for any snow event that we need to get the plows out and the cars out of the way. As far as the core area, and I actually shared to teams, I don't know if it's on the screen up there or not, but I shared to teams the map that we'd be looking at. And this purple area is what we'd be considering the core area, and that's where Rob and his crews, like Manager Mack just indicated, could treat this area as we do today. And even though a snow emergency is declared, we would say that means no parking in all these fringe areas on the streets, remove all cars from the streets in these fringe areas. With that public service announcement, we would also include the details of that within the core area, we'll be plowing streets or avenues today and tomorrow, depending on the calendar and the day of the week that the activity is going on. So it would become an administrative function on how we carry out that information to the public, and we'd make sure to articulate in a way that made sense. Really what we're describing is exactly how we operate today. Nothing would change from an operational standpoint with Rob and his crews. It's just that we're amending the ordinance to allow for us to operate the way we do today, by not having to ticket somebody up here in Valley View or River Ridge because they're parked on an avenue or a street on a day they're not supposed to be, when in fact we go into this neighborhood and we plow it all in one fell swoop. We don't apply the streets avenues rule up here or on the east side of town or on the south side of town or around the lake. Those are what we would call more of a zone plowing as we operated currently today, as we would have the last several winters. And really, it's just this purple area, the core area, that gets treated with the streets and avenues designation on the odd, even days. So what we're describing is exactly what would be carried out, which is exactly how it has been carried out. It just formalizes it all in the new ordinance language.
Thank you. Councilman Jurens.
Quick story from convention. Mayor was talking about conversations that he'd had in community, and he was approached very aggressively by three people over his years as a mayor out in western South Dakota. The first two were, what about those doggone potholes? And they were aggressive with him. His wife's sitting there and they're having dinner. The third one came up, I can't believe you're constructing those roads. I can't drive down them. It's kind of a lose proposition some days. And the roads in Watertown right now, there's been a lot of progress over this summer. I believe that extra $1 million. And now we're getting into the next phase of snow removal, and I got my first call. And that is our plan, and this involves our plan with PSAs. Are we moving? I listened to some of the conversation, and the traditional is through the radio stations. Well, there's a lot of change in how people are getting their news. One is Watertown Public Opinion. That wasn't the quickest way, but, things are evolving in that world. What is our plan for changing PSAs? Because, weather's in the forecast. And then number two, if we decide to pull the plows off, and people are still trying to get to work. And last winter, we had lots of those messes of people trying to get to the manufacturing and to all their work. And now we have a crap show.
Thank you. I'll allow City Manager Mack to respond to those questions.
Thank you, Mayor. First, residents, non-residents, whomever can subscribe to alerts through the city's website. And that's probably the quickest way to get notification if there's a snow emergency or any type of alert from the city. We do put all of our information out on the city's social media sites. Our website does have a scrolling news banner for weather alerts. And we also share it out through more traditional media means through the newspaper, like you mentioned, is a little slower to get that, and our friends at the radio stations. As it relates to pulling plows, I know that we had several snow days this past season, but I don't recall pulling the city plows at all. I know the county pulled plows several times, and that is often due to safety of the plow drivers. It's a little bit different out in the county. The conditions maybe are a little bit different than in town. But if we were to pull plows, and just like when we close city facilities, we put those alerts out the same way we do with the PSAs. The quickest way to find information related to closings or pulling of plows would be through the city's social media sites.
Councilman Jurens?
And we're always open to suggestions on how we might be able to do that better.
Things are evolving so quickly in the world of media and getting things out. I did hear the social media, and that is likely the way the newer generations are going to get their information, because a lot of the vehicles left are a lot of times the newer generation, or people that just aren't paying attention. And how do you get that to them? Billboard, more radio. In the advertising world, they're starting to do more of this geocaching, this throwing your flashes up, and that stuff gets spendy and goofy. But that's how the people in their teens, 20s, and 30s are getting their information.
City Manager Mack?
That's all. Great information to digest, and again, we're always looking for ways to improve. As it relates to towing cars, I asked Chief Toomey just a couple of minutes ago, we already are towing a significant number of cars during every snow event, at least 10 or more. So I don't expect that changing is going to change that dynamic. Some people just don't. Some of it too is a little bit of personal responsibility. So pay attention to the weather, pay attention to where you're at. It takes all of us to be able to do this well and to do it right. I don't think any of us like having to tow a car, having to give a ticket, because it frankly slows the process down. And I'd like to get these guys home sooner than later to their families, because they're putting in real long hours and real long days during that season.
Thank you. Just want to make something clear. The mayor that Councilman Jurgens was referring to was not me. So felt that there was a little confusion there. Councilman Beeler, did you have something? Councilman Schutte?
All right, thank you, Mayor. First off, yeah, I appreciate, any organization that's evaluating how they're functioning, what's working, what's not working. So I mean this. I appreciate your guys' work on this, and it creates good conversation to work through this. I brought up some points at the work session. A couple councilmen weren't potentially here for that, and so I just wanted to bring, just to kind of remind us of some of these points that it was mentioned by Public Works Director Von I, a handful, and I get that. When you look over the overview of the city, you see maybe 9, 10, 11 places that maybe don't show a driveway or a garage or something like that. So that's why you probably mentioned, a handful. But like I'd mentioned at the work session, just on my block alone, there's 4 houses in a row that would show, every single one of them would show a driveway and a garage. But the one, it's a 5. There's 5 units in that old house with 1 garage and a driveway, and there's 5 units. So right now what they're doing is those tenants are parking on the avenue, and so when the street gets done, and then they park on the street when the avenue's getting done. That's what my wife and I do the next house down, is we drive to the, when we get the information on the PSA, then we know when to move our vehicle depending on what day it is. Our house will show a garage, but it's built in the 1800s and doesn't really fit for a vehicle, and so there's and it shows 2 spots in the back, which now, with not having our 4 boys in high school at one point, now we only have the 2 vehicles we drive. We do have a third, and an old 62 Chevy as well that was my grandpa's, so we'd have to, I know we got to find storage or something if we need to park in the back. So I understand that concept. Then you go next house, it shows a garage in the back, probably from an aerial view, but technically that used to be it's a half, it's an apartment. And it looks like a garage with a driveway there, but now it's a unit, and someone's living in there. So now you got two places on that property, 2 different houses, if you will, with no garage, but there is a little driveway in the back. And then the next one over, they got upstairs living and downstairs living, so it shows a house with 1 little garage, again, built in the 1800s, and a little spot for 1 or 2 vehicles potentially, but again, there's 2 units there, and who knows how many, on any given day, how many vehicles. That's just 4 houses on the block I live on. And so we're already hitting that handful just in 1 block potentially that it'll affect. And it's, again, you go around the city, around that, I guess, the older part of the neighborhood where I live in. And if you do drive around, you see a lot of houses do have a driveway of some sort or a garage. It's just, again, there's different scenarios with different families, multifamily living in some of these older houses, things like that. So that's one point that I guess I just want to make sure we're aware of. It's going to be a little larger. It's going to affect more people than we think, a handful. Also, parking in the boulevard. So we happen to have trees in our boulevard, in front of our house. So we've got that issue. I was looking it over after the work session, like, okay, how would I do this? I thought about it. I'm trying to be open-minded. I could hire for $250 a winter, follow the plow. There's one organization for sure I know, or company that does this, and I suppose I could treat my boulevard like a driveway and just pay them to follow the plow and keep a spot open for me so I can pull up on the boulevard, or maybe in one spot and pull the one vehicle this way, one vehicle that way. However, you got trees, so you got that issue. So then we'll have to park in the neighbor's boulevard. I wonder what that's going to look like with the neighborhood if all of a sudden I'm parking in front of my neighbor's house on their boulevard, because I can't in front of my house because of our trees. So now all of a sudden you've got that possibility of creating an issue, especially if that's the house that's got, 4 other units that don't have access to a driveway. So, I guess we just, we got to figure, because I guess that is one question, is the boulevard public domain? So we could technically park in anybody's boulevard down the road from us if we so choose? I guess I would, I do want to clarify that question if someone has an answer for that one.
City Manager Mack would like to respond.
So I don't have a specific answer to that question directly. I think one of these two guys might, but a little context on boulevards. So we fully recognize that boulevard parking will not and should not work for everyone. But there are areas of town where boulevard parking could work. However, without this language change, it is completely prohibited to park on the boulevard. That's all we're asking, is that where it works, and if it works, go ahead, throw your car up on the boulevard until we get by with the plows and pull it back down. It's not meant to be a solution for everyone, right? To your point, space, trees, all of that. My my initial thought about parking on other people's boulevards is, well, no, because even though it is city property, the property owner does maintain it and take care of it as their property. So, I mean, you could try it and see what your neighbors think, I guess.
Director Von Eyde, did you have anything to add?
Thank you for that, Manager Mack. I was going to say the same thing to provide some context on the boulevards. I, too, think that is silly at surface when you look at that. Why are we allowing parking on the boulevard? We all know that's not practical in the dead of winter in South Dakota. But the only reason that came up is because it is otherwise strictly prohibited in the ordinance. So we had to add a caveat in there that if in the scenario where a certain landowner had that possibility, this gives them the ability to do so without getting ticketed. We realize for 98.5% of the community, this isn't going to be a solution, but we had to add this language in order to make it legal for the few that could use that as an option. And I would also echo Manager Mack's input on the parking of the boulevard. The boulevard is technically part of the public right-of-way, but because homeowners maintain out to the curb in most situations, I wouldn't advise that people park in their neighbors' boulevards either. It is public right-of-way, but would not be advisable.
Did you have a follow-up, Councilman Shetty?
Sure do, thank you. So, based off that, and thank you for the information on that, if I were to back up a few years with when we had 4 boys in high school, let's say 3 of them having vehicles, we would have had 5 vehicles, only 1 spot between the trees and our boulevard. We'd have been forced to do something that this would affect either park on the neighbor's boulevard just next over, or I guess the other option would be parking at a public parking lot, I suppose, and then make the boys probably walk or try and drive them back to, to do a little carpooling, get in the cars where they got to be. And this is legit. This isn't just a makeup kind of this is something I've lived and happen to be living in this. And so, like you mentioned, 98.5%, well, I just mentioned 4 houses on 1 block that this would affect, where the boulevard is the only option short of going to a public parking lot, however many blocks away that may be, to navigate through this. Again, it probably is just one area of town mostly. I suppose if you go north of Kemp, I would assume maybe, I don't know, I haven't looked real closely, maybe most of them do have driveways, but then again, depending on multi-level families and things like that. So that's just my observation. Just want to make sure this is, as we have a healthy debate, whichever way we would go as a council, I would, of course, okay, this is where we're going and we got to figure it out. So it's not like I'm going to be divisive over it, but I just want to make sure we really have the full view as we look through something like this. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Bueller.
Thank you, Mayor. It sounds like our councilman here needs a parking ramp. No, the question I have, this would be for Street Superintendent Boehner. Have we seen this with other communities, and have they had success with boulevard parking?
Brookings currently does it. They, when they call a snow emergency, there's no parking on any roadways, and they do allow parking on a boulevard. And from what I understand, I talked with some of their staff, this has been a couple years ago, street staff, but I talked with them about it, and it doesn't appear they've had too many issues with that, but I'm not sure how many years they've been doing this. This might have been that way for 25 years,
Thanks, Rob.
Councilman Peters?
Yeah, I'll defer my time to my council member to the right here, but I would say, before we move on, I appreciate the staff's interest in this topic. I think that we can all appreciate that this is proactive government, not reactive, so thank you guys for your time, no matter how we turn out.
Thank you. Councilman Danforth?
Thank you, Kyle. I have to take back what I said about you earlier today. The good thing about having this discussion is, as we talk about snow, we have fewer and fewer complaints about mosquitoes. So that's the good side. I got a couple comments, a couple questions. At the work session, I had asked about defining a timeline for removal of vehicles from boulevards. Has that been discussed?
Yes, it has, and that's been incorporated into this ordinance amendment. As if my screen is still up there,
24 hours.
Once adjacent roadway has been cleared of snow, all vehicles must be removed from the boulevards within 24 hours.
Okay. So I'm just going to make, and this is me here. My interpretation of what I heard at the work session in regards to avenues and streets was that you wanted to do away with that. Not just in ordinance language, but that you wanted to do away with that to provide you more flexibility. Rob, I'm hearing something different today than what I thought I heard at the work session, which a number of the comments that we have heard today are really more focused on the fact, at least in my opinion, that we were going to do away with the avenues and streets plan in the core area of town. So maybe I misunderstood what was presented to us, whatever days ago that was. But if that's the case, if we in fact aren't doing that, but we're allowing some flexibility, then I got to ask myself, why are we changing the ordinance language as it relates to the core area of town? Why aren't we just adding language that doesn't require that in the non-core areas or the surrounding, the peripheral areas? Because then it states what we're going to do. Now, I agree with City Manager Mack that let's have let's have an ordinance what's required, but otherwise it's procedural, it's policy, it's whatever. That's a good thing. But we need to be consistent with what we do. And I'm somewhat confused based on what I thought I heard versus what I'm hearing today as to what our intent is and what we're actually looking to do. So that's my comments. That's my question is, why are we changing the core area then at all away from requiring avenues and streets, because that's where we use it? And if we need to add language that affords us the flexibility or the fact that we don't do that in the peripheral areas, then put that in the language, that it's only the core area then, if that's what it is. So that's my comments.
Thank you. I'll open that up for anyone who would like to answer.
Yeah, thank
Director
you,
Von
Councilman. So the shifting of what we do in the core area is simply based on the feedback we're getting from the council. If we want to retain the streets avenues rule in the core area, what we're saying is the language we've drafted can allow us to do that operationally, administratively. Because a snow emergency can be declared for the entire city or portions thereof, what we would do is declare a snow emergency for all the fringe areas outside the core area. And then in that same PSA explicitly state that the core area would be plowed on the east, west, north, south, odd, even day, depending on the situation. That, again, would become a completely administrative function that's not hard, fast, etched in stone in a city ordinance, that if we wanted to change someday, would have to go back to an ordinance amendment. So this helps untie our hands. It gives us the ability to continue to operate exactly like we are today, but yet legalizes everything that we're doing without having to worry about those fringe areas that aren't operating on a streets avenues alternation.
Follow-up, Councilman?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Based on what I'm hearing then, it seems like the discussion about parking on boulevards seems irrelevant, because that really, we're talking about that being primarily in the core area of town, right? That would primarily be expected to be used, right? So why even open up that can of worms about parking on boulevards if we're gonna stay with procedurally the alternating avenues versus streets?
Yeah, again,
That opens up, now we got an enforcement issue of, now we're gonna be driving around looking for cars that have been there more than 24 hours. So now we're gonna add to that. So why does that even come into play if we're gonna stay with the alternating days?
City Manager Mack?
Well, it's another avenue, right? It allows for something that we didn't allow before that could be helpful if needed. The intent for this winter is to keep operating as we have been, simply because we haven't had time to explore what purely zone plowing or changing the operations could look like. If we make any operational changes, we obviously would be notifying not just the public, but sharing that with you all. For example, if we were to add, add streets to the emergency routes, that would come before you all for awareness and adoption of that. I guess what we're asking for is flexibility to be able to move the snow. And if this isn't the right language that makes it comfortable for you all, then we'd like some guidance on what language you'd like to see. And while there's certainly a comment to be made, if it's not broke, how's that go? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But we certainly have opportunities to do better. And that's what we've been tasked with, is to find solutions to that. I think the boulevard is a little bit of a red herring. It's an opportunity to use it when it works. It's not an end-all be-all for snow, but for those that it might work for, when it works, they can't do it right now. So it's just giving, again, another opportunity. But if this is not the language that makes sense to you all and that you don't want to see, then I need to know what you want to see so I can direct staff that way.
Any follow-up, Councilman? Questions, comments, Council? Councilman Jurens?
I'm not saying this is the perfect solution, because there never will be in snow removal, I believe. And I've only been involved in it for a month, and I haven't even gotten into it. What I do believe in is efficiencies. And what I do believe in is that the public wants their doggone snow moved as quickly as possible, and without adding a whole nother crew to get it done quicker. If those two things are better, I am for that. That's all I have.
Councilman Beeler?
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'd be open to, personally, I think I'd be open to that, giving them that opportunity. Like you had mentioned, it may not happen very often, but there may be times where it would save somebody a little bit in a situation. I think one thing we're gonna have to be careful about, I think, if we do change any language, is to make sure that we educate the public as to what the core area is. What is a fringe and what's a core, so they know what's gonna happen in their neck of the woods. But, I think it might be worthwhile giving it a try. And if it doesn't work, it's not necessarily set in stone. I know sometimes it's difficult to regress on some of these things once you put them in place, but if it doesn't work, change it.
Thank you. Councilman Shetty?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one point, just in with Councilman Jurens making a good point about, we want to do this as well as we can. That's why we're having this conversation. If Public Works Director or if Street Superintendent could answer this question as far as how possible is it to answer this question as far as time savings and average snow event We talked at the work session, it's not going to take a day off, but even a couple hours can make a difference. As City Manager Mack mentioned, family getting home sooner, workers getting home to their family sooner, that is. Does it shave off potentially 2 hours in a snow event as far as the time, or a day, or just if you could, I don't know, it's a tough one to answer, but if you could kind of shed a little light onto that.
Street Superintendent Bainan?
Thank you. The days that it would help us are generally avenues days. Those are the shorter days. There's less avenues to plow than streets. Sometimes we get done with avenues at 2, 3, 4 in the afternoon, and we could go right into streets if we change this language, as it would require people to get off of streets and avenues. So that's where we'd gain an advantage. It won't be a day gained or 20 hours gained or anything like that, but it'd be minimal. But it would certainly help in some cases, not all.
Thank you.
Councilman Bueller.
Thanks, Mayor. Street Superintendent Bannon, I just have a question. If that's typical, that we finish up earlier when we're doing avenues than streets, would we want to shift some of those resources perhaps to one of the outlying areas that we contract right now?
We currently do that. We attempt to, if we get done early, we try to go into other areas that we might not have a contractor hired to do during that event. It's not always consistent that we get contractors, because they might have other things going on, they're plowing other things, but we do attempt to do that. We don't send anybody home early. We do try to find areas to do things, or we work on equipment that needs to be repaired before the next day, that type of thing.
Follow-up, Councilman?
Thank you, Mayor. What do we do in regards to alleys then?
We have a contractor hired to do all of our alleys in town, other than the downtown business district. When we do downtown at 2 in the morning, we do all those ourselves. But otherwise, we have a contractor hired to do all the other alleys in town.
Would that be another opportunity for us to, take those resources and work with the alley projects maybe?
As far as plowing, that's a possibility. One thing about it, we're really lucky. Our current contractor has been doing that about 25 years, and he's extremely efficient on his process of doing it. He makes one swath through each alley as he goes, and he gets them all done in about 8 hours. Every alley in town on a 3-4 inch snow event. So, but yeah, that is possible.
Thank you, Rob.
City Manager Mack?
I'd just also add, we have all the downtown parking lots that need to be cleared. We also often send crews back out because things have blown back in. So there, it's not about cutting out early, right? It's about just getting all of the work done that we typically do, and coordinating with our contractors in the most appropriate manner.
Councilman Shetty?
Just one quick question then on that. What is the ordinance on public parking lots? Being that we got trees in the boulevard and don't have enough, for some of these houses with driveways not having the driveway space, can they park in the public parking lot during a snow event? Or
yeah,
when do the public?
They can.
When do they get snow or cleared out?
Yeah. So yeah, you can park in the public lots, and typically after the whole town is done, then we will send out a separate PSA. So if we got done today with all of the snow, we would send out a PSA saying all public lots will be cleared on Wednesday. So we usually give a little bit of time in between that as well, knowing that people have moved their cars there. Yeah, and it's just part of the program. It comes last. So,
Councilman Bueller?
Thank you, Mayor. This is for City Manager Mack. Do you feel that the public understands and is aware of the fact that they can park in those public parking lots, as our councilman didn't know that? Just saying.
Well, I mean.
Councilman Bueller, if we're going to point out how much we all don't know, we will be here for a long time. City Manager.
I don't know how to accurately answer that. You know, we've been talking about public lots my whole time here. We've added additional signage. You know, there's maps kind of all over of where they're at. We certainly can make sure we're including that language when we put PSAs out and doing that. Yeah, not everyone knows everything about everything. So, you know, yeah, if you don't know, ask.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? I have one, and that would just be thank you to the council for thoroughly vetting this on the first reading, and we will have a second chance at this. In Watertown, there are very few issues that are what I would call universal. One is roads and potholes because we all drive on them, or most all of us. Some of us are just passengers depending on age, but we all use them. And then the other thing is clearing those roads out, and that is snow. So that is universal, and it is always, it's not a matter of if we get snow, when it's going to be plowed, it's how fast can you get it done and how efficiently. And that is always what the issue is. And I'm sure that Superintendent Bainan, you get more complaints than all of us up here when it comes to not clearing it fast enough. So I know that it is your desire, and Director Von Eye and everyone in the staff, to clear them faster and more efficiently for the betterment of Watertown, because you want to basically make the citizens happy. Because that's your job, and that's what we want you to do, and that's what we want to give you the power to do. So I thank you for at least bringing this forward for the discussion and the possibility of improving how that's done. Councilman Tupper?
Bruce, are we going to let him pick on us for being old? Or you, I guess, maybe us?
I saw both of you drive to the council meeting tonight.
Yeah, you hit a couple of curbs and you're marked for life. Can I make a comment?
Councilman Beeler.
Seriously, folks, I just want to say I think you guys did a hell of a job last year. And I think it's gotten better over the last 4 or 5 years. I think it's improved every year, and I like the fact that you're looking for ways to improve on the efficiencies that we have. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? All right. Thank you very much. We'll hear that again at the next council meeting. Next up on the docket is a second reading of an ordinance amending the zoning map of the City of Watertown of Lot 2, Block 4, the Lakes of Willow Creek First Edition, to the City of Watertown from C3 Highway Commercial District to I1 Light Industrial District. Director Von Eye.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the second reading for this zoning amendment proposal brought forward by the applicant. This is up in the Lakes of Willow Creek subdivision, and this is one of the maps we have available this evening, along with several others as needed for the discussion. But 28th Street is what winds into the Lakes of Willow Creek subdivision from Willow Creek Drive to the south. This parcel right here on my screen is the new ice arena, and this building here is shaded in red in the C3 zoning district is a new Peterbilt truck maintenance facility. And then immediately east of there is what used to be HydroClean. It's a pipe cleaning maintenance service type company, and it's changed names since then. They're a tenant in this facility. And the gist of the rezone is that Peterbilt would like to utilize a portion of this property owner's lot in order to maximize the circulation of the truck traffic on their site and maximize the use of their building that was built on an existing foundation several years back that was poured with another plan in mind. But anyway, they maximized the use of that existing foundation, and they built their footprint where they did because of that foundation having been there already. What that's created is the necessity to track and drive onto this neighboring parcel. And so what the developer in this subdivision and these two landowners have worked out is to propose rezoning a portion of this lot, selling it to this landowner, and then that allows Peterbilt to use a portion of this landowner's lot for their trucking purposes, truck maintenance purposes. Looking at the comprehensive land use plan, this area is generally shown as mixed use. We have a few different maps associated with, let's see here. Actually, this map is one that Brandy, Community Development Manager Hanton put together for our purposes tonight. This green turquoise hatched area is what's being proposed to be rezoned from C3 to I1. And this black hatched area is what I just described as being used by the adjacent landowner. So it's kind of a swap in a sense. However, this is not at this time being formally rezoned to C3. The other point I was making was with the comprehensive land use plan. There was a few different maps in there that show the long-term use of this area. You can see a portion of this is cited to be industrial use and the other portion as commercial and residential. That's generally what the preliminary plan for this subdivision shows. Again, this map as well shows some industrial use with mixed use development. And the third map that shows future land use, a small portion of industrial, some commercial, and then mixed commercial, high-density residential. That generally follows the overall preliminary plan and concept plan for this subdivision. And hopefully we provided enough context here tonight on why the rezone request, and we'll stand by for any questions you might have.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Community Development Manager Hanton, do you want to add anything before I open it up for a public hearing? Okay. I have to open up for a public hearing before the council can deliberate. Is there anyone who would like to testify on this item? I'll close the public hearing, open it up for council action. Do I have a motion to approve the ordinance amendment? Motion made by Councilman Schutte, seconded by Councilman Danforth. Councilman Bueller, would you like to open it up?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question. I guess this might go to Community Development Manager Hanton and/or Public Works Director Von Eye. Would it make sense to consider replatting that property so that portion that they want to rezone would be a part of the property to the east, or the west, I'm sorry? You know, absorb that in, so it's the same plat.
Certainly. So Councilman Bueller, to that point, when the application came in, there was not interest necessarily in selling off this portion of land to the Peterbilt parcel, but rather using it as an easement. And in that scenario, we would want to retain the I-1 zoning on this parcel so that the entire parcel was one uniform district.
Maybe I didn't explain myself. I'm talking about the property to the east, the adjacent property to the east of what you've got shaded in purple.
Okay.
Would that make sense to look at potentially replatting that so it's a part of that property?
Okay, replatting. I'm sorry. I thought you said rezoning.
No.
Yes, a replat is required of this portion. If this is approved tonight, the applicant would bring forth a plat to absorb this portion into their lot and also replat this adjacent lot because we can't leave this non-compliant sliver of land. The reason we don't require that plat at the time of zoning is simply to save the applicant a few $3,000 to $5,000 on platting costs. If the zoning does not go through, we've saved them that money. That's why we haven't been bringing the plats forward with the rezone. But it is a requirement that that plat would have to come forward before this rezone would be formalized and finalized.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councilman Danforth.
Oh, well, excuse me. I want to go back to the point at which this area was looked to be, the vision for this area was looked and how it was going to be developed. The zoning that's up there, a lot of the commercial zoning is reflective of the vision that the city was sold on as we were entertaining the possibility at that time of placing our ice arena in this development. One of the concerns for those that were on the council then is the industrial development and what that area looked like in and around the current location for the ice arena. And my recollection certainly is that the area in question, the whole area, was going to be a combination of various types of residential along with commercial development that would support maybe the neighborhood type needs, coffee shops, whatever, as well as potentially something like, a hotel or something that would support the $36 million ice arena. My concern, I'd love to be able to help the two businesses out right now, but I'm concerned that what we're doing is we are expanding an industrial zoning area in an area that we had a primary concern with, that was a main topic of discussion in our consideration for this land. And now we're going to expand an industrial area there. My understanding is that even if they plat this together, at some point in time, they could carve a piece off and they could replat and they could sell, as long as it's a conforming lot, they could sell that off as an industrial use then. And that is not what we wanted and that's not what our intention was, and that's not what we were sold on when we made the decision to place a $36 million building there. And this is right across the street from that. Mr. Vaughn, I in my notes, I thought, why not just do an easement, between the two businesses and just leave it at that for now, somewhat a retractable easement of some sort, or to look at something, that, on the land to the north that isn't visually contradicting what we had for a vision in the placement of our ice arena in that area. If you remember, our ice arena was kind of, it was going to kind of be a springboard for that commercial and residential development. Well, now we've got a potential expansion of industrial area. What's the next one, right? What's the next lot over? The comprehensive use plan, I believe, in the first reading of this, it said that those areas to the east could also be potentially considered for industrial use. Again, what the comprehensive use plan says really doesn't reflect what the decision-making process and the vision was when we committed to placing our facility in that location. So I would love to be able to help them. I'd love to be able to find a solution for them. But I am not in favor of adding more industrial zoning because of what vision was painted for us and what we committed to because of that vision.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councilman Shetty.
Thank you, Mayor. As far as the property there that's already being used, I'm all for always trying to help them expand their business, like they're mentioning with moving trucks in and out. So we like to work together. We're on the same team here, if you will, as far as businesses and property owners and the city. And so I don't want to get in the way of that. The challenge for me is, it looks like it's a sliver of land. They're going to try to keep things functioning like they've been functioning. They don't plan on moving anytime soon. So on the surface, it really does make sense if indeed they're going to use it for that purpose, to kind of keep their businesses moving forward in a better way. However, there's only so much land right across the street from the ice arena, right? And so, as Councilman Danforth had mentioned, there's, so there's one more chunk there right across the road, if you will, that's on the back side, I guess, if you will. But I guess my concern or question is, what is the vision for the north area, back 40, if you will, north of the ice arena, as far as future growth there? If anyone could answer that or help us in that.
There's actually a possibility that it could be answered not only by our staff, but also I see a representative from J&J Earthworks, or J&J, the land sales, here, who had stepped out during the public hearing section. So I would give you the opportunity to answer that question if you would like to. Just please announce yourself, even though we all know you. Our good friend Colin Paulson.
Colin Paulson with J&J Land Sales. Just to, I guess, answer some of the questions. So this is an area that we do not currently own, and we are trying our best to accommodate the businesses that are already there. And not owning a portion of that land does make it difficult. And although I understand some of that conversation, we can't force something that's not ours. We can't force something upon them. And so being the land developer around that piece and wanting to see successful businesses out there that's only going to help this community and this area specifically develop, that's what we're trying to accomplish here tonight. And I mean, it's the same rhetoric all the time with us, against us, I guess. If when we're asking for things like this, we're not asking for a favor. We're trying to do what's best for the community, and we're met with, no, it doesn't make sense all the time, and it does get frustrating. But as you can see on this map already, residential will start to the north of this piece. That is the plan here. And yes, it is still intended to be all commercial in the yellow portion there. And that's what we're working on still to this day, is trying to ensure that that remains commercial. But like I said, we don't own the white pieces in the middle there. And so we're trying to work with those owners and new owners that are trying to come in. And this is the only thing that makes sense for them right now.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Director Von Eye?
Thank you, Mayor. To Councilman's previous questions, too, what I got pulled up here is a copy of the preliminary plan. The preliminary plan is a formal stage in the development review process where the developer provides their street layouts, their lot layouts, and their anticipated zoning and uses within their subdivision. And just sharing this for context on what the preliminary plan looks like, because the question was asked, what is the plan to the north? So these lots here comprise of the city's land where the ice arena is being built. Across Jeremy Avenue to the north is this white area is the parcel that would be absorbing this lot to the east, and this is the lot or a portion of it that's being proposed to be rezoned. All this yellow shading on this preliminary plan was indicated to be C3 commercial zoning. The light green is R3 zoning designation. The red shading is R1 single-family residential zoning. And so barring any rezone of this portion of this lot, the remnant lots do remain currently zoned C3, and from the preliminary plan anticipate being held that way. Now, with any preliminary plan, I mentioned that being a formal part of the development review and approval process, but also wanted to point out that because we have this as a template to a steering document to decide how this land continues to get used as the plats and the zoning comes in per phase, it is the Planning Commission and councils, they have full latitude to take a look at that, like we're doing right now with a request. They're saying, yeah, you know what, a business came in, there's an opportunity here, we'd like to rezone this portion. But generally speaking, they're otherwise following the rest of the preliminary plan as outlined. They have that latitude, and each of those boards, of course, then subsequently have the ability to either approve or deny those kinds of requests. But that's why we're here today, and that's generally what the preliminary plan is about and what that looks like. Brandy, Miss Ann, did I forget anything?
No, I just wanted to add something more, that I was able to talk to the current landowner of the property. It's 138th Stromseth Drive, where that, and you blanked on, or it was, what is the business that's there?
Peterbilt?
No, where Kurt Levodchek.
Used to be HydroClean.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Pipe Masters,
Pipe
yes.
Masters.
Sorry about that. So they plan on conveying this property, if you guys, there we go. This 145 feet, and if we had the other map, but that was shown in that one map that was hatched out. So this the west 145 feet will go to Peterbilt, and then before they are combined, it will have to come through the rezone process again, so then that will go to C3. However, just with what is in front of you today, we can't say that there will be a net loss or gain because there isn't. We're expanding the I-1. However, they will be including an access easement over that black hatched area. And there will also be a deed restriction that it will not be developed further because the purpose of that area is for the access, because the Peterbilt, where that foundation was existing, has the overhead door that makes it unable for the vehicles to be able to, or the trucks and trailers to be able to maneuver on the property that Peterbilt has purchased. So it's actually a great situation where two neighbors are working together, and as this continues to develop, I do believe that there won't be a net gain of I-1 district, but it's just replacing property that in the existing district that that Lavacek had today, and then just giving the piece to allow for better maneuvering on the west side.
Thank you very much. Mr. Paulson, I will go back to you, but first I want to just address something real quick in regard, in your first comments, you were talking about just some general angst and frustration at development. This isn't necessarily development, as it's not J&J doing the development, so there's definitely not any, picking on your company, but.
Yeah, I'm not blaming.
Yeah, this is simply a rezone for this, and the question in front of the council is whether or not we feel it is appropriate to have the I-1 instead of the C3. So I understand there's always that dance between developers in the city, but it really shouldn't be a competition or one side wins and the other side loses. That's not what we want, and I'm sure it's not what you want either. So, but go ahead.
Correct, and I thank you for that, Mayor. And I was just going to point out that, our Plan Commission took this up a while ago or a few weeks ago, and they voted heavily in favor of this. And, I respect that board and their decision and the time that they put into that. And I know that there's been a lot of actions that have gone against them, which also creates some public distrust in the process too. So just wanted to point that out, that the Plan Commission is heavily in favor and supports this.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? Councilman Danforth?
Randy, I can't think of what your title is, so I'm just going to call you ma'am.
Community Development Manager, Hanton.
Okay. CMD. The hatched mark, the area to the left of on the purple side, right there. Could that lot today be replatted, and does it conform with a standalone industrial site? Lot?
Yes, it does. Because they only need 100 feet of lot width and then 30,000 square feet.
So with setbacks, and I can't quite tell if is that a loading dock or something there that's coming off that
Yeah.
left side?
So where the existing building is here with the white roof? Is that what you're
Right,
talking?
yep.
Yeah, so that does meet the setback. That's a 20-foot setback. And then there are trucks parked here, which is obviously why they want to keep or have the deed restriction so they can't develop it, so that they can use this area for maneuvering, and then Peterbilt can as well.
So they're both going to share that piece of land, although there'll be a ownership exchange.
Yep. And however they're going to have their private attorneys work those agreements out is their deal.
Well, we all know attorneys will do it, won't they, Ms. Carrico? So that, the hatched mark area right now, then it'll be replatted, and then a rezoning request for that will come to the Plan Commission and then to this body to turn that into C3.
Yes, and that's where I want to just be cautious of promising that necessarily, because it could be a standalone I-1 lot. However, there will be the deed restriction where they won't develop it further because they need it for access. But if they are going to replat this lot into the Peterbilt lot, they will need to rezone it to C3.
But if I may ask, then the deed restriction can always be changed, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so it's nothing, and no different than if we were to not approve this, somebody can always come back and any one of those pieces of land, and that's the landowner's right to request whatever they want, right? It's just a matter of whether it's the right thing for us.
Right.
My only concern is, if it truly is going to be a net zero, I'm probably less concerned with it. I am concerned about industrial expansion in an area that we were not led to believe was going to occur. And because now you got the next lot over, somebody's going to come in, and then you got a lot or two lots, and it's all the way out to whatever avenue that is, or street, or whatever it is to the, so then, where's that going to stop based on what the vision was? And again, I go back to it. I don't care what the comprehensive use plan says in this case. I know it's important, but the people that worked on the comprehensive use plan weren't a part of the acquisition process and the commitment process for our ice arena. So I can go along with supporting this in order to help these businesses, but I'm going to throw up a red flag and tell you that I am concerned about further development of industrial sites in and around this area.
Councilman Peters?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I would just go on the record and say that I do see this as a pretty simple land swap. I appreciate the council members that were on the other side of the fence before Councilman Jerns and I were, that maybe got to be in those discussions of what the vision would be and what it shouldn't be. But looking at this from a fresh perspective, I see this as a simple land swap, no net loss, no net gain. I'm going to be supporting this.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Finance Officer Bob Zine? Oh, you're just waiting to call the vote. Okay. Actually, I'd like to address some really good comments from Councilman Danforth, because he's definitely not wrong in the concern about the area out around the ice arena. I would just say, as someone who was involved in all of those meetings, I think Councilman Bueller was in on almost all of those meetings as well with me. And the concern, I think that we would share your concern that we don't want an expansion of I-1 out there. We don't want it, well, we definitely don't want it to be all I-1. The desire was to have it be commercial and then bleeding from commercial into residential. Looking at the zoning map of Watertown, there are quite a few areas where industrial and C3 go hand in hand, and then residential comes immediately afterwards. So while this might not be ideal, the main desire, I think, I don't want to speak for everyone on the committee, but I was involved in all of those. The main desire was to help spur development out there. We knew that we could not control it exactly, but we had a TIF on the south side. We had a land for development on the north side of Willow Creek, and the desire was to just spur some development out there. And while this might not be ideal, I would agree with you on that. It's at least something, and hopefully it will continue down that path, or down a path of development. Hopefully C3 is the desired, but your concerns are not unjustified and not ungrounded. They were addressed, at least by the committee. So, Councilman Bueller, would you agree with that? Yeah, okay. But thank you. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor will say aye, opposed nay. The motion, just to restate it, is to amend the zoning map of Watertown from C3 to I-1 out in the lakes of Willow Creek. Finance Officer Bob Zine, do your thing.
Okay. Danforth?
I'm excited to say that in the first vote, I will vote yes.
Okay. Holleen?
Aye.
Jurens,
Yes.
Peters,
Aye.
Shetty,
Aye.
Tupper,
Right.
Bueller. Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Motion is unanimous. We'll move on to an approval to reject the bid for the sale of the Wells Fargo building located at 20 North Maple. City Manager Mack.
Thank you, Mayor. What you have in front of you is a recommendation to reject the bid that was received. We received a bid in the amount of $600,000 from one bidder. The appraised value was just a little over 1.3 million. Statute requires that if we were to dispose of this, it would need to be for 90% of the appraised value. Therefore, we're recommending you to reject this bid.
City Attorney Carrico, do you have anything to add?
No, I think she pretty much covered it. So, City Manager Mack.
Thank you very much. The motion is to approve to reject is a weird way of saying it. Let's just say the motion is to reject the bid. Motion made by Councilman Tupper, seconded by Councilman Danforth. Let's open it up for questions, comments, council. Councilman Jurens? No? Councilman Danforth?
This doesn't change the fact that we had put this as surplus, correct? It still remains in that manner until we
Yes.
decide other.
Yes,
Otherwise,
that is correct.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any further questions or comments? City Manager Mack, did you have anything to add?
I'll let Attorney Carrico correct me because I may be wrong on this. But because we have gone through the bid process now, we do have the ability to negotiate directly with interested parties in other manners of purchase, if that makes sense.
That would be correct, both a direct sale for, cash in hand or installment contract. Both caveats require that it be 90% of the appraised value.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councilman Tupper.
To Attorney Carrico's comment, you said it'd have to be at least 90%. You mean at least, it could be more than that.
Correct.
Okay.
I think I'd speak for all of us. If bid does come in, hopefully it is for more. But hearing no further questions, unless City Manager Mack?
I guess I can just share, when we spoke with the bidders and spoke with others who had expressed interest and didn't submit bids, it's largely due to the lending environment right now and significantly high interest rates. So the building has retained its value. It's a good building. There is a desire. Timing might just not be that great.
All right, all those in favor will say aye, opposed nay. Finance Officer Bob Zine, please call the roll.
Okay. Danforth.
Aye.
Helene.
Aye.
Jurens.
Aye.
Peters.
Aye.
Shetty.
Aye.
Tupper.
Aye.
Bueller. Motion carries.
Bid is rejected. Any city council member announcements? Any topics for future discussion? City manager report?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a reminder that at 4 o'clock tomorrow in the chambers, we have our capital improvement plan hearing. And then on Wednesday at 4 o'clock here in the chambers, we'll have our budget hearing. And for you newbies, you won't actually vote on the budget until the budget ordinance comes in front of you in November.
Thank you. There's no reason to go into executive session, therefore the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion made by Councilman Peters, seconded by Councilman Tupper. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, the motion is to adjourn. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. Motion carries. Good night and God bless you, Watertown.